We'll discuss the minhag, the custom for having dairy, having milk on Shavuot. Is there any basis to this custom? Where does it come from? Is it just having milk? Should you have a meat meal as well? Because in general the assumption is for Simchas Yantiv that we usually have basar v'yayin, meat and wine. Even though technically speaking, minimally one has to have wine, because there's a question today, Bisman she'ein Beis HaMikdash Kayam, when the Beis HaMikdash isn't up, whether there's an absolute obligation to have meat, or it's just recommended. So we're not really going to go into that topic now. I'm going to focus more on the custom of having dairy during Shavuot. Does one have to have a meal? Is it enough just to have cheesecake at Kiddush? What exactly is the minhag? And as always, they're probably different minhagim. So we'll begin with the Shulchan Aruch, the Ramah. The Ramah brings down based on the Shtei HaLechem. And since we have the Shtei HaLechem, so therefore the Ramah says the Ramah's the minhag is to have first have dairy and then have meat in the same meal. And that's the reason, because first, since there's certain things you have to do when you're having the separation of dairy and meat, we can't have dairy and meat together. So therefore, because of different halachas about, let's say, cutting the challah that's cut, you can't have from a meat meal to a dairy meal. Ramosha has a kula about the part that's not cut you could use and make later on for something dairy. But in general rule, the challah that's cut during the meat meal cannot be used for dairy, so therefore it's an excuse to have, so we have dairy and meat, we have first dairy then meat, so we make a scenario where we have to have the 2 loaves of bread, and they have to, to represent the Shtei HaLechem. That's what the Ramah brings down. The Mishnah Berurah has a more famous explanation. He quotes in the Zohar, or I should say, the Mishnah Berurah's explanation is that since the Jewish people just accepted Torah Har Sinai, they didn't know anything about kosher. It came as a big shock to them, all the different laws of kosher. And as we all know, the laws of kashrus can be very complex, especially today with modern technology and different machines. But whatever the details of the kashrus are, and there are many, it's easier, not easy, but easier to go with dairy than meat. In other words, meats you have to slaughter the animal, you have to salt out the blood. There's a whole process before we get to the meat in the store. Well, dairy has a process, but it's not as rigorous, and therefore the Mishnah writes, the minhag was right at Har Sinai to have dairy, because they weren't familiar with all the laws of kashrus. It would have been too much to ask them to have meat, to learn all the laws, pots and pans, so therefore the custom was they had dairy. So according to the Mishnah Berurah, you don't necessarily have meat, you don't, excluding the laws of Simchas Yantiv, they assume that you don't have to have meat. So then al Shavuot, the minhag was to only have dairy then, because that's what they have. But you wouldn't have to have like milk and meat in the same meal. According to the Magen Avram quotes from the Zohar that we've been counting up Sfiras Omer from Pesach to Shavuot, the 7-week period, and we're counting up to Yemei Tahara, that's the day of Kabbalas Torah, that we go through the purification process of 7 weeks. It's like a woman goes through the Shiva and the Kiyam, the 7 clean days before she goes to the mikveh. So too, and Torah was all about, we had these 7 weeks to prepare for the Torah given at Har Sinai. And since milk represents purity, so therefore they point out that we want to have milk on Shavuot because it represents this time of the 7 weeks, the seven clean days, and therefore the Magen Avraham, based on the Zohar, quotes the minhag of having milk during on Yom Tov. There's another explanation from the Yeshuas Yaakov. The Yeshuas Yaakov brings down that in general, in Judaism, we know we always have a separation of milk and meat. He discusses separation of fish and meat. That's a different discussion. So we have a principle of the Gemara in Kedushin tells us, Gadol hametzuba v'yoseh mishe'enu metzuba v'yoseh. Greater is the one who does something who's commanded than the one who just volunteers it. So, and Tosafos writes, even though volunteering on a certain level is higher, however, since it's harder to do because when you have to do something. However, Rabbi Yosef, who the Gemara tells us, Imsachim, who says, if not for Atzeres, I'd be like any other Joe in the Shuk. He writes as well that he was the one also, and he went ahead and he made a big party on Shavuot to show that Shavuot is this thing that singles out the Jewish people. And therefore, the whole purpose of the Torah is to take the mundane, is to take the Kodesh, take the Chol, and make it Kodesh. And that's what the Torah does. It's not like other religions where you go live on a monastery, you go to reach a level of Kedusha, you go somewhere else, you go far away from people. In Judaism, you deal with people, and that's how you become Kodesh. So that's what Yeshua Yaakov writes. We have, the Gemara tells us, Dam nekar v'nasa cholov, that the blood turns into milk. That therefore Dam is, that we have the ability, that we have milk on Shavuot to show that even though originally it turned out Dam, when Makadesh the Chol, we turned the Dam into Cholov, and the milk represents the ones being Makadesh or Chol. If not for Shavuot, if not for the Torah, we wouldn't have the ability to sanctify the mundane. And as well, like the Beis Halevi says, that the famous Midrashim, that when God was giving the Torah to humans, by Moshe there's a Midrash, by Abraham, the angels were complaining. And then they pointed out, well, there's a halach in the Torah, you can't mix, or you can't mix milk and meat together, and they don't eat. So we see that the Torah doesn't apply to malachim. So therefore, the Beis Halevi says that's why we go with milk and meat. We do things that will cause potential halachic problems, and then we deal with them like the milk and the meat by Abraham, by the three angels. So the different minhagim in terms of Shavuot is whether you just have dairy, or it's not just having dairy, but you start off with dairy, and then you turn over to meat. So either like the Ramah, the Shtei Halechem, we do things that cause us to kind of use two different loaves of bread, reminiscing the Shtei Halechem. Or we have the Mishnah Brura, that dairy is easier for a beginner, so therefore we work with milchas until you become more of an expert in kashrus or better accustomed, and then we move you on to meat. The Magen Avraham with the Zohar, it's about the Shiva and the Kiyam, about purity, and milk represents Tahara. We had the Yeshuas Yaakov, that Dam Nekar B'nafseh Cholov, that we're Makadesh the Chol, that you would take the mundane and make it holy. And similarly the Beis Halevi, that the Torah was given to human beings, not given to angels. And like the Midrashim with Avram and Moshe, the different things, since angels don't eat, obviously they can't deal with the halachas. So we do things that create halachic issues that we could solve. And then we first have milk, then we have meat.